It's my pleasure to introduce Richard Davis, CEO and founder of 51 to Carbon Zero. Take it away, Richard.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for following this Global Green Marathon, which I think is it's an amazing initiative. So really congrats to the whole team for putting this amazing effort together. So let me share my screen and walk you through a few thoughts about why automating carbon footprint measurement and management is really important, and then open it up to the discussion with the audience and with you, Peter. So I'll share my screen, see if tech is with me. Here we go. And just give you a bit of a high level, first of all, of what we do at 51 to Carbon Zero, and then deep dive into why data automation is so important for achieving net zero. So very quickly, we are a software company helping organizations track and reduce carbon emissions. We're based in London. I'm calling today from the London HQ. But we got offices also in the US, where you guys are, Peter and the team. And we work with our clients across over 30 different geographies. Clients across many industries, from technology, manufacturing, food, distribution, and so on and so forth, including NASDAQ and FTSE listed companies. I'm Richard Davis, the CEO and co-founder of 51 to Carbon Zero. I started the business with my co-founder 3.5 years ago now, out of the frustration of not being able to achieve the ambitions that my previous employer and many companies are being working for set when it came to net zero. Because at the heart of the problem that we have today globally when it comes to net zero is the discrepancy or the gap between what companies want to achieve and what companies are actually doing. So because of legislation, because of investor pressure, 80% of listed firms today have a net zero target. A net zero target is about having a clear target and ambition to reduce your carbon emissions by 90% by 2050 at the latest. So that ambition exists, is publicly stated. However, in reality, only 11% of the top 2,000 companies in the world have reduced emissions in a way that is aligned with those ambitions. So a huge discrepancy between what companies and organizations want to do and what they're actually being able to achieve so far. At the heart of the problem, there is a data problem or a data challenge. Only 9% of companies state that they comprehensively report their carbon emissions. And that is because of the fragmented nature of carbon data. The carbon data lives in so many different places in a business, in an organization. It's about the kilowatt hours that you use at the offices or the manufacturing sites. It's about the tons of paper that you might use for your publications. It's about the kilometers or the miles traveled for business or for delivering your products. So all these different data points exist across the business in a fragmented way. They need to be imported, harmonized, cleaned, and then used to estimate carbon emissions. And that means appending carbon emission factors, which essentially is a conversion factor from tons of paper to CO2 equivalents, from kilowatt hours to CO2 equivalents, and so on and so forth. Now, all of this is managed today via spreadsheets in most cases. So we say carbon management is trapped, jailed in spreadsheets, which means that the whole process is highly manual. So you got all this data coming through in an inconsistent way. You try to calculate things manually, which means you're prone to error. The whole process is inefficient and difficult to scale. And if an auditor comes in, and there are more and more companies luckily going through third-party audits, then that whole auditing process becomes a really long exercise and quite an expensive one because, as you know, auditors charge by the hour. So you really need a platform solution where the data is harmonized and centralized, cleaned in a data room, where all the different carbon calculations are tracked. So there is an audit trail. So if anyone comes in, they know exactly where the data comes from, what carbon emission factor has been applied, by whom, if there's an evidence attached to the emission record, and so on and so forth. So that's what we have set ourselves to build with 51 to Carbon Zero 3 years ago now. And I'll give you a quick glimpse of what this looks like with a short video. Hopefully the sound works.
Every year, humanity emits 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. To avoid a climate disaster, we need to reduce that number to net zero. But starting or delivering on net zero can often feel overwhelming. That's where we come in. 51 to Carbon Zero is a platform designed to make net zero simple. We help you measure your carbon footprint and reduce your emissions with ease, all while keeping your workforce engaged in the process. Unlike other legacy carbon softwares, we offer more than just a platform. Our virtual climate experts become an extension of your team, supporting you every step of your climate journey, from setup to achieving your climate goals. The platform streamlines your data collection through the use of our spreadsheet uploader, AI invoice scanner, or by connecting your existing software to our platform. Our platform is ready to measure all your carbon emissions across scopes 1, 2, and 3. This emissions data comes to life on interactive dashboards and can be used to complete various reporting standards. But we don't stop there. Our platform will help you set an actionable decarbonization strategy, allowing you to choose initiatives from our solution library and assign them to colleagues within your business. Colleagues will be accountable and engaged, even being able to complete climate training courses. Set, accelerate, and achieve your net zero ambitions with 51 to Carbon Zero.
So hopefully that gives you a sense of what the software solution looks like. But more importantly, it's all about the results that the product or the software brings. And we're seeing our clients really moving forward with their net zero ambitions. They're able to measure much faster, almost half the time, versus a traditional consulting-led or and Excel-led approach. Reporting 100% accurate. All auditing have been passed at the first round, as much as external disclosure, and decarbonizing faster. We have seen an acceleration in carbon reduction of 70% versus previous engagements where everything was manually done. So really important to use a software solution, ours or anyone available on the market, to really make sure that your ambitions become reality. And I will stop there and open it for conversation with you, Peter, and anyone who's got questions in the audience.
What are the benefits of investors?
For investors, so I mean, investors, if you think of investors managing a portfolio of companies, the same issue that a company is facing is kind of scaled across 10, 20, or hundreds of companies that they've got in their portfolio, especially if you're a private equity, where you got like strong ownership of an investee company. You need to start collecting, because of regulation, all of the carbon emissions of the different companies and roll it up into your own ESG, environmental, social, and governance reporting. So in a way, for investors, the same issue is kind of multiplied by a factor of X, depending on how many companies they have. So even more, I would say, for an investor, it's important to have either a software centrally that can collect data that the individual companies are already pulling together, or deploy the platform across the different companies so that it automatically rolls up into one view.
So you really have two markets, the corporate market and the private equity portfolio companies.
Yes, and also holding groups. So if you think of holding companies, which are even more operationally active with their opcos, that's true also for them.
Okay. So how fast are companies embracing these type of technologies like yours?
It's mixed, as you can imagine. It depends also on the geography. There are geographies which are more regulated, like the EU, for example, where disclosure is so stringent or becoming so stringent that companies of a certain scale understand that this is not possible. It's not possible to do this appropriately without a platform. We see other markets like the US, where say there's a mixed reception. So companies are still like thinking when is the right time to start in full on the program. Enterprise companies, yes, I think SMEs are a little bit behind. And then we see on APAC, I would say Australia, Japan, there's a lot of pickup because, again, regulation is quite stringent there.
Will you have a specific offering for the U.S. market as the SEC regulations take place in a year and a half?
So the SEC is the main disclosure is based on the GHG protocol, which is the global carbon accounting standard, which we follow as well. So there is a data pool or extract out of the system, which actually gives you all the data in a way that is ready for that type of SEC disclosure, which will be aligned with the GHG protocol. So the answer is yes.
That's so you're already ready for that.
Yeah.
So what type of specific companies are most responsive? Are energy companies very interested in your software?
So we have found lots of positive response in technology companies. So companies who are who need to understand a bit more in detail emissions related to their digital operations and their tech, data centers, AI, etc., etc. That has been a sweet spot for us. Also, the background of the founders is in the media tech space, and we've seen lots of companies, advertising technology, media, digital media, now starting to receive questions from their customers, B2B customers, around their own corporate emissions, and struggling a little bit to find a quick and meaningful answer to it.
But their energy intensity is quite low. Data centers are about 2% and probably rising to 8% of demand. It seems to me there's another market for you in the energy sector, which is 73% of greenhouse gases. It's a bigger.
So energy is 73% of global emissions are from energy.
73.
Yes. So the consumption of that energy happens across manufacturing, managing real estate, and transports.
Correct.
So if you look at where do digital technologies fall into this? It's a bit of a mix. So you need to look at how devices are produced, how data is stored, transmitted, and then consumed. If you look at that, the numbers say that 3.9% of global emissions are attached to digital technologies, including networks. Interestingly, if you think of the aviation industry, that is 2% of global emissions.
Yes, I know.
Look at that. So it's quite interesting that there's a lot of attention in the public eye, in the public space, on things like aviation, but digital and our digital lives, which are just increasing, are absolutely critical to solve the climate challenge.
So how is your service offered? Is it deployed from the cloud? Is it software as a service? Or is it customized per client? Maybe you can explain a little bit about that.
So it's a so-called SaaS, so software as a service. So there's no software to be installed locally. It all lives in the cloud. There is an onboarding process where we help the customer map their organization within the software. A really important thing for any successful transition, whether it's in carbon or is any other type of corporate change, is accountability. So we map and we mirror within the carbon footprint the P&L of the business. We call it the carbon P&L. So if the way you're structured is by region, by business unit, we mirror that in the carbon footprint, so that then we can assign carbon reduction targets to the individual components of the business and give your part of the carbon emission of the business to you, Peter, for example. If you have to change the company vehicles in the US offices, that will be your carbon data and your carbon objectives. And that's really important. So the setup is not time consuming. We kind of listen to how you operate. We then mirror everything in the platform, and then you can involve everyone in the business who is part of the climate program to be on the system as well. So it's quite different from a legacy carbon accounting platform that just looks at purely measuring carbon and 2-3 people might be involved. This is an engagement and accountability system as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing more interest in digital twins. Are you looking at digital twins down the road?
It's interesting. So we were part of a forum or a panel session last week at the municipality of Milan, so Italy, one of the European countries here. And they were talking a lot about digital twins for the city. They've built a digital twin for the city of Milan so that they can build scenarios and projections for urban planning, traffic management. So we're thinking we're experimenting the same on product design and product and logistics. So can you actually map based on historical data what would happen if you change some of the components of your product design and data center management as well, or the logistics and distribution of your product if it's a physical good. And there's a lot of research in the space. We are partnering with a couple of external specialist provider on this, and we are looking to bring to market something early next year.
Yeah, during Climate Week, I saw a digital twin for buildings. Basically mapped buildings with different devices such as HVAC systems and lighting, etc. So and the idea obviously was to measure the emissions. So I can see that.
And to that point, Peter, back to the digital emissions, a digital twin of a data center as well, or different data centers, because you might have different around the world. You can activate different servers at different time of the day, depending on the energy mix, on where is the usage coming from, because you want to have the server as close as possible to the end user. All of that as well via digital twin can be managed in a very interesting way.
Oh, thank you. So there's a deployment. What happens on day one when you deploy your software?
Yeah, so we let's assume that a company has never done this before. So we sit down with them for like an hour onboarding session. We give them a high level of what carbon accounting looks like, because most likely they're not 99% of situations. The client, the customer will not have a carbon accountant in-house, and they should not have one, to be honest. So we give them the basics on what this means and what type of data they need to look for. We go through all the different emission categories that are relevant and material for the customer and say, okay, for this category, these are the 3 types of data that you could use from the most to the least accurate. We give them a bit of homework, and then they go and see where the data exists in the business, if it does exist, where it's stored and how. And based on that mapping, we build what we call the data blueprint. That is, okay, this data emission source, we can automate and import the data directly with an API. This one you collect via spreadsheet at the moment, give it to us. We will map in our system your spreadsheet as long as it's consistent with what we need. So we build like an automated pivot, a macro essentially, and so on and so forth. Some other data might be manual data entry. So we train people maybe in the different offices to input like their kilowatt hours data. So it's a the onboarding process and the data workflow is very customized. Once that is set up and it's smooth and fast and efficient, everything else goes in autopilot by the system.
Are you finding that the companies are mostly on spreadsheets, or they still have hard copies, or it's many different things?
So spreadsheets and PDFs of utility invoices, yes. Hard copy, not that much, luckily. So that seems to have gone away. It's a bit different when you look at public bodies. There's a bit more hard copies going on there, as you can imagine. But yeah, it's mainly spreadsheets and emails as well. So some people send information to each other via email, and then it's like that can't work for obvious reasons. So there's a lot of change management that goes with the implementation of the platform that is required. And we go through the process with them. We enable the client to understand. We just don't drop the software and run away, because otherwise we're giving an empty box almost. So we make sure we understand how they can use it and deploy it.
Is your software sort of AI self-learning, that it's getting more granular as it grows?
So we use AI with care, because AI has got a big footprint as well. So we got those considerations in mind. So we run SLMs rather than LLMs, so small language models rather than large language models. So we use our own data, and we use documentation that we have vetted in advance to help the software read the data from our customers, the customer data, and the wider data pool. So there's a wider data lake with benchmarks and everything else. This avoids, so it's much more insightful. Of course, you can interrogate the data via a chat box, which is pretty cool. When you ask crazy questions, luckily there is no hallucination. When you ask things like, what is the carbon footprint of my dog? Which we have tested, the software kind of responds appropriately. And again, using small language models in this case, we also avoid hallucination because the AI is not going out on the open internet and just looking for any type of information. We vet and we make sure that the information that the software is using, that the AI is using, is actually from reputable sources and our customer data.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your presentation and also answering all my questions. And hope to see you again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.